The MGAA has launched a series of mini-webinars exclusively for its members to access, offering support for their own CPD and awareness, and these will be delivered by Searchlight Insurance Training.
Hello and welcome to the fourth mini-webinar, Creating a Safe Environment. Okay, so today's learning objectives. By the end of today's session, you will be able to summarise what psychological safety is and how this impacts your professional life. You'll also be able to lead conversations with your peers on how to create that safety. You'll be able to explain to your peers in the leadership team why creating a safe environment for all the team should be a priority, and this includes the benefits that it would bring to your workplace. And then finally, we'll be able to list the tools, ideas and resources to support you in creating a psychological safe space and the best working environment for you. So let's kick off. So firstly, what is psychological safety? When we talk about safety, we don't mean the actual physical environment, we mean more the emotional environment and the workplace that we're working in. So psychological safety is the feeling and belief that you can share your thoughts, opinions and ideas freely without fear or shame. And then psychological safety is a group phenomenon that reduces personal feeling of risk and fear. Now that's really interesting, and we'll touch on that a little bit later, but that reduction of that fear factor is really key in creating the psychological safety. And when we see safe teams, they make mistakes more often, but they do not feel though they need to hide them. And again, we'll explore that in more detail. So I guess first question is, why are we bothering? Why are we bothering talking about this today, and why should this be on your radar? So 89% of people believe that psychological safety in the workplace is essential for them. So this is current statistics that have been released. And when talking to people and their priorities within their working environment, psychological safety is very important to the majority of employees. And the statistics go on further. So 2 in 5 people feel they hold themselves back at work by fear of failure. So, do you resonate with that fact? Is that something that could potentially be restricting your creativity and innovation in work and your ability to thrive and excel? And then 3 in 5 people are actually hiding something about themselves to their employers. That's crazy, isn't it? To think that over half of the people within our work team could be hiding something about them, whether that's personal or professional, but they don't feel comfortable sharing that and being their full self at work. And this is why it's important the statistics don't lie. So a good example on why we talk about why we bother about this is Google launched a project called Project Aristotle. You can kind of look it up online, and they looked at 180 different teams, variety of successful and emerging in terms of their kind of establishment. And they also looked at how they performed. They identified what makes the team. They defined effectiveness, they collected the data, and they identified the dynamics. And when they did this research on the 180 teams, again, variety in performance and success, the overall thing that come out from the results is actually the top priority for the successful teams was psychological safety. So team members feel safe to take risks and be vulnerable in front of each other. So that was the top priority for them to be that successful. And even when we look at maybe the teams that weren't performing as well, it still ranked very high in terms of a priority. And from all the research it came out, because this is on top, this is what people want to see, and this is what enhances performance perspective. So from an individual perspective, we're bothering about talking about this because everybody wants to excel in their career. Everybody wants to feel as though they can thrive and do more. So it's a huge benefit to individuals, and then there's huge benefits to a business and a team as well, as why we would do this. So, but why are the results the way they are? So people feel more confident to speak up if they work in a psychologically safe space. They feel they can take more risks. They can spot opportunities potentially, and there could be a risk, but they feel they can take that risk. They spot potential dangers and are highlighted rather than trying to hide them, or maybe just go around the problem. And there's space to disagree. So there's a mutual space within teams and performing project teams that allows you to have disagreements and conflicts. That's positive conflict, which also brings a higher performing team. So these are why the results are the way they are for that Project Aristotle. And so what are the benefits? A mix of these are for business and for individuals. So 27% of reduction in employee turnover. So the business would be massively benefiting from increasing psychologically safe spaces. There's 76% more engagement. So you yourself will feel more engaged and focused and committed to your role and your tasks, but so will the business. You'll have 50% more productivity. This is a really key one for me, 74% less stress. I mean, that, who doesn't want that? So with bringing the ability to have positive conflict and take risks and be okay to not fear failure, that is, you know, automatically going to bring less stress to your role. And then 29% more life satisfaction. So overall, kind of that work satisfaction is key, and those are the benefits. And the people that work in these safe teams are 26% ready with new skills, so they learn faster. So, you know, they're more agile, they're more dynamic. They're 57% more likely to collaborate. So again, because they're not fearful of maybe disagreements or to take risks or to identify danger or potential pitfalls, then they're more likely to collaborate and have that common ground with their team. And 67% more likely to apply a newly learned skill. So not only do they learn the skills from being in that association, but they actually apply it, which then that's where you get that personal growth and that CPD, which is absolutely key. And obviously all of this is because, like I said, mistakes can be made. When you're in a psychologically safe team, mistakes can be made. Ideas can be shared without fear. So, you know, we've all maybe been in a meeting or in a conference and, you know, you think of a question, you've got an idea and you think to yourself, I won't put my hand up, or I won't say that in case it's silly, or because, you know, in case I've misunderstood the question. But actually, if you're in a psychologically safe space, there should be no fear. You should be able to speak freely about your ideas, your questions, and you know, they're well received. And there's also a joint accountability with everybody within the team. So you're kind of moving away from that blame culture that we might sometimes see. So that accountability is also really key in terms of the behaviours that you will see. There will be empathy. So you yourself will be showing empathy to others, maybe when they have done something wrong, maybe when they have taken a risk and it hasn't gone right, maybe when they've excelled and they kind of seeking some recognition. And your managers and leadership team will also show that empathy. So again, that joint accountability to show those behaviours. The no blaming of others is absolutely key. So that's something that, you know, to create that safe space, we really need to move away from looking for a person or a team to put the accountability on for why things have gone wrong, rather than actually what could we have done better. And people speak up without fear. So again, the whole premise around everybody has that freedom to speak up, and you know, there's no hierarchy maybe in terms of who can speak up when and in what meetings. So those are the sort of behaviours that you would see in safe environments. So what drives this culture shift? Because ultimately, creating those behaviours within your team and personally, there's going to have to be a cultural shift. We've seen it a lot in the FCA. They've talked about cultural shifts of late. But what drives that? So positive relationships with your peers, you know, really taking the time to build those positive relationships so they feel they can trust you and you can trust them. And that's where that collaboration comes in. Ways of working. So think of different methods in which you can work. And also, how can you support yourself and others in terms of excelling? Is really kind of driving that accountability across the whole team. But ultimately, it comes down to not being afraid to fail. So the safety comes from being yourself and learning as you go. And I think when you read that, I think that ultimately makes me feel more safe if I could be in an environment where I wasn't afraid to fail, or I was okay to try something out. And if it didn't work, then it wouldn't be, I wouldn't have any ramifications on that. So it's about learning and growing. So how can you personally support creating a safe environment? So a lot will be led by leaderships and boards, but what can you do as an individual to create those safe spaces or encourage that culture shift? So first we're going to look at the science. So our brains look for threats. It's kind of that fight and flight mode, you're scanning all the time. And the minute you identify a threat, your front part of your brain immediately shuts down. And the stress that means that creates your part of your brain to shut down also shuts down your creativity. And so when you shut your creativity down, you lose that inhibition to be able to show innovation or think pragmatically. You really go into a mode of just flight or flight. So that stress really can kind of influence how psychologically safe an environment can be. And ensuring safety increases performance. So when we're thinking of working spaces, you know, you could be scanning a project unknowingly and looking for potential dangers or pitfalls. And as you might see that there's the potential risk in something you're going to do, you will immediately then close down your creativity and innovation part of your brain, and you'll be able to think less pragmatically than before. So the science around that is, you know, we need to reduce the threats so that the pragmatism and the innovation can keep going. Like I said, it's really that fight, flight, or freeze response. You know, if we feel unsafe, we do shut down and we do stop sharing. So, you know, when we're thinking about the science, think about it in a workspace and think, you know, could, you know, a threat could be, okay, I'm gonna have to disagree with this line manager. But that's gonna be a threat. You know, I'm feeling uneasy about that. Okay, I'm immediately feeling unsafe. I'm going to close down. I'm not going to think. I'm not going to excel and perform the best I can. So it's about how do we tap into shutting down those threats within the workplace. So warning signs, think about this for yourself or maybe your colleagues that you work quite closely with. These are just some warning signs to look out for if you think people are potentially in that mode of flight, fight, or freeze. So they stop sharing their thoughts, so they seem very quiet or reserved maybe. Difficult topics are avoided, so maybe you've got something that is bothering you, or you know something's bothering somebody else, but they're just avoiding that topic altogether because they just think it's difficult and it's a threat. You know, are you always agreeing with leaders, or is your peers always agreeing with leaders? So they're very compliant all the time, and they're scared of or afraid of that, fearful of that conflict, and that they can't kind of see through what could be that positive conflict that we can create. You know, do you fear for not asking for help because you don't want to come across as incapable? Or you weren't listening, or you've fallen behind on your work, or have your peers done that? So these are warning signs. And very few disagreements. If you've got a team that don't disagree that much, you know, that is also a warning sign, because what we like to see in psychologically safe spaces is positive conflict is there and you're able to disagree and share your ideas freely. So actually, if no one's disagreeing any of the time, then it's a high chance that actually people aren't feeling safe to share their ideas and collaborate. So to be honest, we all can make mistakes. It's, you know, it's everyone's human. So we just need to kind of keep reminding ourselves of that. We need to model curiosity as an individual. So, you know, how can we do things better? What can we do to make this process quicker? Are there any efficiencies within the process or the software system that we can do? You know, should we ask somebody else to join a project team? So model that curiosity all the time and just challenge yourself to be more curious. Ask lots of questions, ask questions up, ask questions down, ask questions sideways, you know, throughout your whole team. Just knowledge is power with this. So, you know, being open to asking questions is key, and demonstrate active listening. So when someone's actually then having a conversation with you or expressing their views, always make sure you're demonstrating that active listening to show that you're engaged, and they're not viewing you as a threat that you're going to instantly disagree. So it's about that body language that we've talked about before, and challenge each other safely. Though this is kind of an art form to master, probably over months and years. But there's a really great technique. We've discussed it in challenging conversations, but go back to how can you have challenging conversations safely? How can you both, get your point across and land on a mutual place where the solutions are what drive, solution led. So action points to take away from today. Firstly, challenge status quo. So what do I mean by that? So again, thinking about what questions you could ask along the way. So why did we do it this way? What works? What doesn't? Do something. So what feedback could you do? What feedback could you gain on something you just completed or a project you just finalized on? Are you actively challenging to see if we can do that better, if your leaders think that it could be done better? And how can we and you change things? So it's always about challenging for change, the positive change. So again, avoiding that kind of identifying the threats almost and looking for that positive change. Take time to explore is absolutely key. So seek opportunities within your team to learn and explore. So could there be ways in which you could train somebody else? Could you also sit with a team or buddy up? Could you explore what they do? Will that help you in terms of understanding what they might find as threats within the business or what they might be fearful of, and could you support them? Learn about different methods and preferences on learning styles. So again, we talked about this, about just knowing ourselves and allowing ourselves time to just explore different ideas, and look at your behaviors when you're working things out. So, and when you're trying something new, it's always key to see, how do you react when you try something new? Are you fearful, or are you brave, and are you resilient to actually, if it fails, it's okay? So try to just be really present in your behaviors when you're trying something new. Look at how you handle disagreement. So again, I prompt you to go back to the challenging conversations and have a refresh on that. But how do you handle disagreements? Think about that. Do you feel that your peers and managers can disagree? Are you open enough that people feel as though you're approachable to have that kind of conversation? And what do you do if people can't agree with you? Where do you go from there? What is your next point of resolution? And is there space for these conversations? Again, if there's not, let's refer back to the challenging conversations and let's see, how can we change our behaviours to make those disagreements become positive conversations? Reflect on what type of person you are. This is absolutely key. So, are you an introvert or an extrovert? Do you like to do a sort of command and control if you're managing a project? Are you quite collaborative and supportive? Do you tend to lean more on the mentor side? Are you the organizer within your team? Are you the friend? Just identify what your part is to play, maybe within team or with your manager, and just learn more about yourself, because actually, if you can learn more about your styles, then you will be able to feel more secure in your working style, which will then allow you to exhibit some of these other behaviors that we've talked about today. And then collaboration is absolutely key. So think about it now. We've discussed all of this today. So how psychologically safe is your workplace? How safe do you think your team is? How do you think they feel? Share your ideas. Why don't you kind of see if you can have a meeting just to discuss how people feel about sharing ideas? Do they fear failure? Do they feel they're going to get blamed if that happens? How can you tell, have you looked for warning signs? Can you reach out to somebody if maybe they are looking a little bit more reserved or less challenging in conversations? What helps you feel psychologically safe at work? We've gone through some of the options, and I think it's about identifying to you what's important and what reduces those threat levels and makes you feel safe. So just kind of go away today and think about what would help you, because I think if you feel more safe, then collaboration will come after that. And how can you nurture that within your peers? So again, I really encourage you to kind of carry these conversations on with your team and your line manager. So where will you start? Where will you commit? We've covered quite a lot today, and hopefully some of this is quite thought-provoking in terms of your culture shift within your team and just your dynamics within your team. But where will you start today? We've gone through several action points, so hopefully one of those will be able to carry forward. So now you should be able to summarise what psychological safety is and how it impacts your professional life, and you'll be able to lead conversations with your peers on how you can create that. You'll be able to explain to your peers why it's important to create a psychologically safe space and the benefits that it would have to not only you, but your team and your management team. And then we've gone through a list of ideas and tools in terms of supporting you in getting there. So hopefully after this session today, you would have come away with some action points. Here's a list of the other kind of series that we've either covered or will be covering in the next couple of months. My name's Holly Mapstone, and thank you very much for listening today.